On a quiet Sunday in December 2009, a white Chevy Cavalier rolled to a stop at the end of a cul-de-sac in a retirement neighborhood just outside Las Vegas. A man stepped out, locked the door, and walked calmly down the street. He was never seen again. The car sat for days. Inside were neatly wrapped Christmas presents, snacks, and a pillow, as if the owner had only planned to be gone a short while. There was no note, no sign of a struggle, no clear reason why he was there in the first place. His name was Stephen Koecher, and his disappearance has puzzled investigators, family, and internet sleuths for over 15 years. No witnesses, no confirmed sightings, just a handful of security camera frames, a string of unexplained phone pings, and a trail that goes cold almost as soon as it starts. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we retrace Stephen Koecher's final days, examine the most talked about theories, and break down, step by step, what most likely happened. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there. December 2009. A pattern of movement. In the early weeks of December 2009, Stephen Koecher was living in St. George, Utah, a small desert city close to the Nevada border. He was 30 years old and renting a room in a house on the city's outskirts. At the time, he had a part-time job distributing flyers for a local window washing business. His landlord had recently contacted his father over missed rent payments, and financial concerns were mounting. But by all accounts, Stephen continued with his routines and remained active in his church community. On the evening of Wednesday, December 9th, Stephen left St. George in his white Chevy Cavalier and headed north. His movements over the following 24 hours formed a large, looping drive that covered over 900 miles across parts of Utah and Nevada. Around 6:45 a.m., on December 10th, he was seen buying gas in Salt Lake City. A few hours later, he purchased fuel again in West Wendover, Nevada. From there, his vehicle was next traced to Ruby Valley, a remote area in northeastern Nevada, where he arrived unannounced at the ranch home of John and Kathy Neff, parents of a former acquaintance. He stayed for a short lunch visit before heading back the way he came. That same evening, Stephen made several stops as he returned south. Gas in Springville, fast food in Neffy, and then back to St. George by late Thursday. In conversations with family members that day, there was no mention of the long road trip. Nothing unusual was reported in his tone or behavior. The following day, Friday, December 11th, Stephen remained in St. George. He continued handing out flyers for the business, helped a neighbor with a locked door, and later that evening took part in a family gift exchange over the phone. He drew his brother and infant niece as recipients for the upcoming Christmas holiday. December 12th, the day before. On Saturday morning, Stephen was on the move again. Cell tower data placed his phone near Overton, Nevada, around 8:19 a.m. The town lies about 80 miles southwest of St. George, and he would have had to leave Utah early that morning to reach it by that time. There is a gap of nearly 8 hours in his known activity following that ping. Then around 4:36 p.m., Stephen used his debit card at a gas station in Mesquite, a small city along Interstate 15 near the Arizona-Nevada border. Later that evening, just before 8 p.m., he made a purchase at a Kmart on the outskirts of St. George. Items bought included holiday-themed gifts, a bib, cookies, and ornaments. A neighbor later recalled seeing his car parked outside his residence around 10 p.m. that night. By 10:30, however, the vehicle was no longer there. It remains unclear whether Stephen stayed at home that night or simply stopped in briefly. December 13th, the last confirmed sighting. On Sunday morning, Stephen did not attend church services, something he typically did each week. A call from a church friend at 7:52 a.m. was answered and connected to a tower near Bermuda Road and Cactus Avenue in the southern part of the Las Vegas Valley. A second call, placed at 9:53 a.m. by another friend named Clark, also connected to the same general location. During this call, Stephen indicated he was in Las Vegas, but said nothing was wrong and that he expected to return to St. George later that day. By 11:54 a.m., Stephen's car was captured on a home security camera entering the Sun City Anthem community in Henderson, a quiet upper-middle-class retirement neighborhood south of Las Vegas. The vehicle traveled slowly down Savannah Springs Avenue, where it paused briefly before parking in a cul-de-sac. Footage showed a man matching Stephen's appearance exiting the driver's side and walking east. In a subsequent camera angle, he turned north on Evening Light Street and walked out of view. His pace was steady, and he appeared to be alone. No other persons were seen interacting with him on video. One observer later noted that Stephen may have been holding something under his arm as he walked, though this object was no longer visible from the second camera. That would be the last verified sighting of him. December 13th to 14th. Phone activity and vanishing. Although Stephen was no longer seen after his walk through the neighborhood, his phone remained active over the next 2 days. The first significant data point occurred at 4:36 p.m. on Sunday, when the phone connected to a cell tower near American Pacific Drive and Arroyo Grande Boulevard, roughly 9 miles north of where he had parked his car earlier that day. About 2 hours later, a second ping occurred near Whitney Ranch, another neighborhood in Henderson. In the early morning hours of Monday, December 14th, the phone was recorded near the Russell Road I-515 interchange, farther northwest in Las Vegas. At 6:04 a.m., the voicemail system was accessed. No further outbound calls were made after this. For the next 2 days, the phone continued to ping the same general tower sector until it eventually stopped transmitting. It's unclear whether the phone was powered off or simply ran out of battery. December 15th to 17th. Discovery and search. Back in Utah, Stephen's absence had not yet alarmed his family. He was an adult who traveled frequently, and it wasn't uncommon for him to be out of touch for short periods. In Henderson, however, the Sun City Anthem HOA had taken notice of the vehicle, still parked in the cul-de-sac. By Monday, December 15th, staff had looked inside and found flyers from the window washing business. Contact with the company led to the vehicle being identified as belonging to Stephen Koecher. A message was left on Deanne Koecher's voicemail on December 16th, informing the family of the abandoned car. She retrieved the message on the morning of December 17th, at which point the family filed a missing person report. Search efforts were immediate. Police canvassed the Sun City Anthem neighborhood and reviewed surveillance footage. Volunteers conducted searches across the area, including surrounding desert, golf course terrain, and undeveloped lots. Bloodhounds were used near the car, but no significant scent trail was found. The car itself, still containing Stephen's blanket, pillow, flyers, and Christmas presents, showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. It had half a tank of gas and was mechanically sound. Stephen's passport, laptop, and other belongings were still in his St. George room, undisturbed. No travel bag was missing. His bank account saw no further activity, and no additional phone calls were made. Despite a large-scale effort, no physical evidence of Stephen's whereabouts was uncovered in the days or weeks that followed. 15 years after Stephen Koecher vanished from a quiet Nevada suburb, the trail remains as cold as it was in the days after his car was discovered. Without a crime scene, a confession, or a single confirmed sighting, the case has generated an unusually wide range of possible explanations, each one attempting to account for the same handful of facts. A man walks away from his vehicle in broad daylight and is never seen again. Number 1. He walked away to start a new life. One of the earliest and most basic theories is that Stephen left voluntarily, that he parked his car, walked away, and made a conscious decision to never return, either to escape the pressures in his life or to begin again somewhere else under a new identity. At a glance, the idea may seem plausible. He was single, in his early 30s, and struggling financially. He didn't own property, had no children, and was behind on rent. There was nothing tying him legally to one place. In theory, if someone wanted to leave it all behind, he had few obstacles. Some online sleuths point to this as the simplest answer. It's not that hard to vanish if you plan it well and don't tell anyone, one web sleuth's user wrote. If Stephen had decided he didn't want this life anymore, maybe he just walked away. But that notion is complicated by the details of his disappearance. He left without taking money, identification, or clothing. His debit card, which remained untouched after the 13th, had not been used to withdraw any significant amount of cash. His passport and laptop were left behind. And nothing was removed from his room. No suitcase packed, no clothes missing. Then there's the matter of intent. Stephen had just bought Christmas gifts for his newborn niece and drawn names for a family gift exchange. He had told multiple people he planned to be home for the holidays. His family, who reviewed every item of correspondence after his disappearance, found no indication that he was preparing for any kind of exit. His mother, Koecher, was unequivocal. "I can't imagine he is voluntarily staying away from us." There is also the question of motive. If he wanted to disappear, why go to a retirement neighborhood in Henderson, Nevada? Why not drive to an airport or a border? Why leave his car filled with holiday presents and personal items if the goal was to walk away and never look back? Police never found any evidence that Stephen assumed a false identity or left under a new name, nor did they find signs that he was secretly planning an escape. But in the absence of proof or foul play, this theory still lingers. Not because it fits, but because, technically, it cannot be ruled out. Number 2. He ended it in a remote location. Another possibility is that Stephen intended to end his life and chose to do so far from home, in a way that would leave no trace. The theory holds that his calm walk into the Henderson neighborhood was the beginning of an intentional plan to disappear and die in solitude. Supporters of this idea point to his circumstances: financial strain, isolation, a recent pattern of long unexplained road trips. The fact that he'd left St. George early on a Sunday, missed church, and walked off alone into a place where he knew no one, all suggest that he may have chosen this time and place deliberately. Some who knew Stephen reject the idea. He didn't seem like someone who had given up, his brother Koecher said. He was still setting up things for Christmas, still helping people, still thinking ahead. But it's also true that people suffering internally often hide their plans, and sudden disappearances tied to self-harm are not uncommon. Still, there are sticking points. No note was left. No goodbye messages were sent. And if Stephen had ended it in the desert near Henderson, it's unclear why his phone would ping miles away hours later, including in urban and industrial areas, long after the walk was over. Forensic searches of the desert near Sun City Anthem turned up nothing. No clothing, no scent trail, no remains. There's also the timeline. His phone remained active for 2 more days. Someone accessed his voicemail the next morning. If Stephen was dead on the 13th, who had his phone the next day? Ultimately, this theory hinges on a possibility that cannot be entirely disproven, that Stephen ended his life and his body simply hasn't been found. It's possible, but it leaves several pieces unexplained. especially the movement of the phone and the lack of any indication he was in emotional crisis. Number 3. He got lost or had an accident. A less emotionally charged explanation is that Stephen may have gotten disoriented, injured, or otherwise met with an accident shortly after walking away. This could mean falling into a ravine, succumbing to the elements, or suffering a medical emergency that left him incapacitated and out of view. Henderson borders large stretches of open desert, and the terrain around Sun City Anthem includes dry washes, hills, and undeveloped land. Early search efforts focused heavily on this angle. Police and volunteers used cadaver dogs and helicopters to scan the area, believing Stephen might have collapsed somewhere just beyond camera view. But nothing turned up, and the distance his phone appeared to travel afterward, first north into Henderson, then farther northwest toward Las Vegas, makes this scenario harder to reconcile. Then there's the practical question. Why leave the car with gas in the tank, keys not found, and phone in hand, only to get lost in a city where he had cell reception and knowledge of the area? And why did the phone continue to ping for 2 full days, with no sign that Stephen ever attempted to call for help? No toxicology report exists to indicate a medical issue, and no friends or family reported him suffering from health problems. There were no signs of impairment on the day he vanished, and no scent trail or clue was found in the desert. As a theory, it accounts for some elements, namely his solo walk and the absence of immediate foul play signs, but struggles to align with the evidence of phone movement and the lack of physical recovery after extensive searching. Number 4. He was targeted in a random encounter. One of the more widely accepted ideas is that Stephen crossed paths with someone dangerous after leaving his car. This could have been a chance encounter, an abduction, assault, or robbery gone wrong, carried out by someone he didn't know. This theory is favored by some online communities because it fits with a basic narrative. A person alone in an unfamiliar area is more vulnerable, especially when no one knows their exact location or plans. Perhaps Stephen knocked on the wrong door, spoke to a stranger, or was approached by someone offering help, and then something went wrong. According to the Henderson police, there was no physical evidence of violence, no blood in the car, no obvious sign of struggle on the street. But that doesn't rule out foul play, only that, if it occurred, it left no trace visible to investigators at the scene. Stephen's family has not ruled out this possibility, but they also point out that Stephen was cautious and unlikely to accept rides from strangers. He was a kind person, his mother said, but he wasn't naive. Others note that if a robbery were the motive, it's strange that his bank card and phone were never used afterward. Still, Henderson is part of the Las Vegas metro area, and crime does occur. A random predator or opportunist could have noticed Stephen walking alone and acted impulsively. The theory also aligns with the phone pings. If someone took him in a vehicle, that could explain the slow progression north through the city. Without witnesses, surveillance, or a suspect, however, the theory remains unproven. It accounts for the disappearance, but not the why. If Stephen had no money, valuables, or enemies, what was the motive? Number 5. He was lured there under false pretenses. Another scenario suggests that Stephen's presence in Henderson wasn't random, that someone may have invited or instructed him to be there under the impression it was related to work, a gig, or some other opportunity. The idea stems from several factors: his financial hardship, his eagerness to find employment, and the fact that he took multiple long trips in the days prior without explanation. Some close to Stephen believe it's possible he accepted a job or task that required him to travel, one that he didn't tell family about, either because it was informal, sudden, or outside normal channels. There's no record of a job interview or appointment in his emails, nor any clear evidence that he applied for something based in Henderson. However, it's worth noting that Stephen was using public library computers during his job search, and might have received information that left no trace on his home devices. If someone contacted him by phone or through a third party, it's possible the meeting details were never documented. The setting also raises questions. Sun City Anthem is a quiet residential retirement community, not a place typically associated with job sites or business meetings. Yet Stephen drove there directly, parked and walked away on foot, appearing to look for something or someone. That detail, coupled with his lack of contact afterward, has led some to believe he may have been meeting someone under false pretenses. His family and some investigators have acknowledged this possibility without speculating too far. If a third party was involved, that person has never been identified. No witnesses have come forward to say they met Stephen that day. No digital trail has revealed what drew him to that specific location. This theory doesn't point to a clear outcome, only a starting point. It introduces the possibility that Stephen was responding to an offer or arrangement not documented in his digital records. What happened next, whether the meeting took place, whether anyone else was involved, or whether he realized too late that something was wrong, remains speculative. Number 6. Fringe theories and speculation. Beyond the central ideas, several peripheral theories have emerged, some plausible, others less so. One recurring idea was that Stephen's landlord in St. George, who had a prior criminal record, may have played a role in the disappearance. But there is no evidence linking him to Nevada, nor any indication of conflict beyond unpaid rent. Another early theory connected Stephen's disappearance to the high-profile case of Susan Powell, a Utah woman who vanished a week earlier. Online chatter suggested the two had run off together or were somehow linked. Investigators found no overlap in their social circles, and the theory was quickly dismissed. Speculation has also touched on Stephen's private life. Some internet users theorized he may have been meeting someone for personal reasons, possibly tied to a hidden relationship or lifestyle he hadn't disclosed to his family. But no messages, meeting plans, or alternate identities were ever discovered. Those closest to him said there was no sign of a secret life, and no evidence has surfaced to suggest otherwise. Lastly, some have floated the idea of a serial predator or trafficking ring, but these remain entirely speculative. Henderson police have not linked Stephen's disappearance to any other unsolved cases or patterns. As the investigation continues, so does the debate. With each theory, certain facts align neatly, while others remain out of place. But only one scenario can fully explain the timing, the behavior, the digital footprint, and the total disappearance of a man who was, just hours earlier, making plans for Christmas. Stephen Koecher got into his car on a Sunday morning and drove to Henderson, Nevada. He parked in a cul-de-sac and walked away calmly, as seen on security footage. What he did not do, as we know now, was return. Everything that followed points to a meeting, not a random walk, not a desperate final act. Stephen arrived with a purpose. What he didn't realize was that he wouldn't be the one setting the terms. As we've already seen in the timeline, Stephen had spent the days before his disappearance in near constant motion, driving hundreds of miles through Utah and Nevada, making unannounced stops, burning fuel he couldn't afford. None of it was explained in his communication with family or friends. It wasn't tourism, it wasn't errands. It looked like someone else's itinerary. That loop, from St. George to Salt Lake to Wendover, down to Ruby Valley and then back, becomes more significant in hindsight. Stephen gave vague reasons to the Neff family about possibly heading to Sacramento, a place no one knew him to have ties. He then returned straight to Utah. There's no evidence he saw friends, attended an event, or handled personal business. The most consistent theory that fits those movements is that he was completing a task for someone else, a delivery, a pickup, or a dry run for something planned later. When he left again on December 13th, we know he told friends he was in Las Vegas doing a few things. He didn't elaborate, but assured them he'd be back later that day. That call pinged south of the city, followed by another from the same general area, all before he made his way to the quiet neighborhood where his car was last seen. Sun City Anthem is not a place you stumble into by accident. It's a planned retirement community. No businesses, no obvious reason to visit. So when Stephen pulled in and parked, he likely knew why he was there, or believed he did. If someone had told him to meet at a specific address, or given him a vague set of instructions, wait near the corner of Savannah Springs, it would explain his behavior on video, scanning his surroundings, walking with quiet purpose, alone. It's what happens after that moment that forms the core of what most likely took place. Stephen likely met with someone in or near that neighborhood, either at a home, outside, or in a vehicle. Whether they were posing as an employer, a middleman, or simply someone offering work is unclear. But whatever the meeting entailed, it did not go as planned. From that point on, Stephen is no longer seen, but his phone begins to move. Roughly 4 hours after he's last captured on surveillance, the first ping comes from an area 9 miles away. 2 hours after that, another ping slightly farther north. And early the next morning, it's pinging near the Russell Road corridor, a cluster of industrial spaces and storage units. The significance isn't just where the phone went, it's how slowly it traveled. This wasn't a getaway, and it wasn't a phone abandoned in a bush. Someone was moving with it, hour by hour, through residential zones, then into less trafficked areas. At 6:04 a.m. the next day, Stephen's voicemail was accessed. Likely not by Stephen, but by whoever had the phone and wanted to know who might be looking for him. It stayed in that area, pinging the same tower, for 2 more days, then went dark. We've already established in the timeline that Stephen's car was still sitting, untouched, with his Christmas presents, flyers, and belongings inside. No signs of a struggle, no staged disappearance, just a young man's car parked neatly, waiting for someone who never came back. So what most likely happened? Stephen was lured into a meeting under false pretenses, an offer of work, quick cash, or an errand that sounded worth the drive. Whether it was pitched as legitimate or involved something vaguely grey area, Stephen likely believed it would be brief and harmless. He probably didn't tell anyone about it because he didn't think there was a risk. But at some point, once he was in the presence of whoever had arranged this meeting, the situation changed. Maybe he was asked to do something he wasn't comfortable with. Maybe he realized he was being used. Maybe he simply saw something he wasn't supposed to. Private investigator Jim Burke, who reviewed the case, believes Stephen's actions show he was definitely doing something for somebody else. His brother, Dallin Koecher, phrased it more bluntly. Maybe he knew too much and was taken. Both lines suggest the same thing, that Stephen had entered into a situation he didn't fully understand until it was too late. There's nothing to suggest Stephen was involved in anything criminal himself, but desperation creates vulnerability, and someone may have seen that vulnerability as opportunity. Perhaps they never intended to pay him. Perhaps they never intended for him to leave Henderson alive. The slow movement of the phone, the voicemail access, the complete radio silence afterward, it all reads like someone managing the fallout, buying time, disposing of evidence, waiting for the clock to run out. And in a city like Las Vegas, surrounded by open desert, deep ravines, and industrial zones that don't ask questions, it is entirely possible that Stephen's body was hidden within hours of that meeting. The phone may have been the only trace, that ever left that vehicle. This isn't the most sensational theory. There's no conspiracy, no serial predator, no hidden double life. Just a man looking for work, walking into the wrong arrangement, and encountering someone who had no intention of letting him walk away. In the end, the story may be simple. What happened to Stephen Koecher wasn't a mystery of behavior. It was a matter of trust. He believed someone. He followed instructions. And someone made sure he wouldn't be able to tell anyone what happened next.